Welcome to Eye on Wines of Mount Hood Territory. I'm Natalie Marmion. Everywhere you look, Oregon's Mount Hood Territory never ceases to amaze with a rich history, food straight from the farm, recreational possibilities, and of course, award-winning wines. Part of prestigious Oregon wine country, Mount Hood Territory boasts over a dozen boutique family wineries. Tonight, we'll take you for just a taste of the wineries across the region with visits and conversations with 5 local winemakers. Our first stop takes us a few miles south of Canby to Whiskey Hill Winery, a family-run winery and vineyard in the heart of the Willamette Valley.
So tell me about this winery that you created here and where we're sitting and how this came to be for you guys.
It's a family thing. My wife grew up on this farm. And so when my wife was in college, she started doing weddings with her mom as her summer job. So they still do about 75 weddings a year. And so as we went through the permitting process, in order to do weddings on farm ground, basically, we had to do one of 3 things. We had to be a winery, a golf course, or I think the other one had something to do with equestrian stuff. But anyway, so we had to do one of the things in order for them to keep doing weddings. And so wine was it. We planted 15 acres of grapes.
So that evolved. So we're going to plant some vines just for fun so we can host weddings here. And then where do we go from there?
Well, you go to breakfast and decide randomly you're going to make wine. We drove across Wheatland Ferry up into McMinnville. We went to a place, Davison Wine Supplies. We came home, made it in our garage, did 20 gallons of wine our first year. It wasn't the best tasting wine I'm sure anyone's ever had, but it was how we got started. And then we've turned into almost 4,000 gallons this year.
Wow, so tell me about how many acres you have, what you produce, how many different types, your varieties.
Here, there's 15 acres of Pinot Noir. All Pinot Noir is what got planted originally. Next door, we grow 2 French hybrids, Leon Mio and Marichal Foch. We grow Gamay Noir, which we're really excited about that one. Our first vintage was 2021. We'll release it next summer. And then Riesling and Gewürztraminer that we put into our white blend.
Tell me about how your process is different here, what's unique about you guys, what you do here.
It's all family from start to finish. And so we don't have any employees, we do it all. We do have a labor contractor who comes out and helps us with the vines. But we like to let the grape and the vintage kind of show what's going on. So we're not a natural winemaking bank. We'll still do normal ferments. But if we do a vertical of Pinots for 5 different years, it should taste different as it goes. And so each vintage has a story to it. I mean, this vintage 2022 has got to be the craziest grape growing vintage I've seen, with so many twists and turns and frosts and wet Aprils and heat during the summer. And then all of a sudden we get this September and October that is mind-blowingly beautiful. I mean, every vintage should have a story like that.
So being part of the Willamette Valley, tell me about, why that's so special and why people should come out here and what that means to you guys.
Oh, I mean, as most people know, the Willamette Valley is one of the premier wine tasting regions in the world. One of the cool parts about this area, or the Cascade Foothills, or Oregon's Mount Hood Territory, is that almost everybody over here is really small and family run. And so it's a different experience where it's not a very large scale winery, where for the most part, everybody working in the tasting room pouring the wines is the person who planted the grape, the person who tended to that grape to grow it into a full-size vine, who picked it with their family, us with our kids. We take the kids out of school for a couple days every fall to work through harvest and learn and experience it. And then that person made the wine and is pouring it for you, so they can truly tell you the story from planting to glass. It's this family atmosphere through the whole group of the Cascade Foothills and Mount Hood Territory that's, I think, a lot different than a lot of places.
All right, well, thank you so much. I can't wait now to go check out some of your neighbors. So I know you've learned a lot from them, and you guys it's a nice community.
Yes, you'll love them. Every single one of them are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Travel only 6 miles farther south and you will come across Hanson Vineyards, where you will find lush vineyards, sustainable farming, and traditional winemaking. So take me back and tell me a little bit of the history of your winery here, of your vineyards. How and why and when did you get started?
Well, it kind of all started in 1896. when my great-grandfather purchased the property across the road, started farming and dairying. Time passed, and eventually, as an adult, I decided to come back to the family farm and start a winery.
So this property has been in your family for generations.
Fourth.
You're the fourth generation farmer.
Fourth generation, yeah.
Wow. And so when did you decide to plant some grapes and make some wine? What inspired you?
Well, I had been living on the East Coast, Washington, D.C., and post 9/11, I didn't really want to be there any longer.
Yeah.
And I did a mental checklist of what my assets were, and the family farm was really high on the list. Oregon was going through its second big boom, and we became the 215th winery.
So tell me what you grow out here and what kind of wines you're making.
I grow 11 different varieties of grapes, a lot of really unusual things. Most people think Pinot Noir, and maybe a little more Pinot Noir. And I grow Pinot Noir, but I also grow some Riesling and Gewürztraminer and Chardonnay and Pinot Blanc and Marechal Foch. That's one people don't hear of too often. Leon Mio, and an Eastern European variety called Galabach. I purposely grow so many different varieties of grapes because I like putting them together, and I like the process of coming up with putting them together.
It's a little bit like being in the lab at that point, right?
Yeah, there's a little alchemy going on, absolutely. I work on the very non-interventionist side of winemaking. We don't use any kind of herbicides. And in the winery, when I'm making wine, I don't believe in additions or subtractions. So I'm not using all the crazy things that people can use to change their wine. I use native fermentations, so I don't actually add any yeast to it. It's just the natural yeast that exists on the fruit when it comes in. And then I wait for it to become wine. And once it does, I bottle it. So it's very much kind of the hippie end of winemaking.
Oregon's Mount Hood Territory Wine Trail, you're a part of this. What does that mean to you as somebody who participates in all this? Why is that special for you?
It's a great group of wineries. We're kind of off the beaten path and away from the part of the Willamette Valley that most people think about when they think about wine trails and wine touring. And so having this group kind of come together to give people a reason to come over here, to know that there's enough wine over here to make a day or weekend of it is fantastic.
So you clearly enjoy so much about everything that you do out here. When people do come out and they try your wines and they see your property, what do you hope they leave with?
Some wine education.
Okay.
I love when people come to the tasting room with genuine interest about process or style or just general wine questions. I can talk wine all day. And so when people come and show that they're interested, I just love that. I love those conversations.
Thank you so much. Your beautiful property. It's been so great learning about your process and all your wines, and I look forward to trying some. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Coming up, we're taking a look at a winemaker using an ancient technique to produce a truly unique wine in Oregon's Mount Hood Territory. Welcome back to Eye on Wines of Mount Hood Territory. I'm Natalie Marmion. Among the many amazing winemakers of Oregon's Mount Hood Territory is one truly inspired by tradition, as you'll see at our next stop, west of Wilsonville at Beckham Estate Vineyard. This is an exciting time of year for you. You're beaming, you're smiling. You love this time of year?
I do. This is a wonderful time. This is when all of our efforts finally come to some sense of fruition.
What's happening right now?
We are in the middle of harvesting off of our estate vineyard, and we're processing wine grapes into giant terracotta pots.
take me through your process. How long have you been growing grapes? What kind of wine do you produce here? Tell me about Beckham Estates.
Sure, we started here in 2004. We bought the property with the intent of building a pottery studio. Our neighbors grew Chardonnay and Pinot Noir at the time, and I got really sidetracked and convinced my wife that we should plant a few rows of grapes. That led to transforming the property. We went from timber to vineyard. We now have 36 acres. We grow 30 varietals here. And
36 acres.
36 acres in total. We have 20 in vine.
Your idea of 2 rows of grapes turned into 36 acres of grapes.
It ballooned out of control.
Let's talk about your location. It's stunning up here. I mean, it's just beautiful. Talk about how and why you chose where you are.
Well, it was kind of a fortuitous set of circumstances. We were looking for a place to build a pottery in the woods, and it just so happened that the land was perfect for wine grape growing. It was the right elevation and had the right aspect and exposure.
What do you grow?
We grow Pinot Noir, we grow Riesling, we have Sauvignon Blanc. We have a varietal from Jura called Trousseau that is not so common in Oregon. Aligote, which is the white that's permitted in Burgundy other than Chardonnay. We've got Gamay Noir, and then an Edelsbicker white planting with 10 different varietals that are co-planted, co-mingled in the vineyard.
What I think is so interesting about your property here and how you produce your wine are your terracotta pots. So take me back again. You intended to only have a pottery studio here. How did that morph into this, and how do you use these pots now as part of your winemaking?
Yeah, so we did move here to build a pottery shop, and I actually put the pottery on hold. In 2012, my wife showed me an article on an Italian winemaker named Elisabetta Foradori, and I looked at the photos and saw her wonderful amphora in northern Italy that she uses to make her wines, and said to my wife, I can make those.
These are ginormous pots that you're making the wine in.
Yeah,
I mean,
the vessels we're making now are 950 pounds of wet clay, and they're just under 500 liters, so about 120 gallons.
why is this, in your opinion, a better way to make the wine? What does this do for the wine?
So I find that the beautiful thing about using terracotta is the purity that we can achieve with the wines. With barrel, you're imparting flavor and aroma, as well as tannin from the wood. With the amphora, with the terracotta vessels that we call novum here, we're building texture in the wine. We get a bricky, dusty, chalk-like, mineral-driven texture, but we aren't imparting flavor or aroma. So it's really, for me, an opportunity to showcase our farming, showcase our place, and the varietals that we put so much effort into growing.
Can someone like you, so familiar with wine, can you taste the difference in wine that's been made in a terracotta pot versus a barrel?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and for me, again, what I think of the most is the purity that we achieve in terracotta. Wines made in French oak have a sweetness to the palate that comes from the sugars that are in the oak tannin. And when the wines are made in terracotta, we've got this sense of neutrality that you don't achieve in barrel. And I think this is something really interesting to reflect on. In the history of man and wine, humans have used terracotta vessels for winemaking for the last 8,500 years, and barrels only 500. So this is not a new thing, but it's a chance for us to reflect on past practice and to embrace something that has been done historically.
Let's talk about the Mount Hood territory, what it means to you to grow here and be part of this whole Mount Hood territory, why you think that's such a special ththing.
Well, it is such a huge area with so much diversity. It's really amazing to move from Mount Hood to our location on Parrot Mountain and all of the geography that lies between those two locations. And we really love being a part of the community of wine growers in this region and a part of this marvelous place.
Well, Andrew, I need to try some of your wines, see if I can taste the difference. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Coming up, we visit a winery nestled in the quiet foothills of the Willamette Valley, specializing in sustainable techniques to make superb wine. Welcome back to Eye on Wines of Mount Hood Territory. I'm Natalie Marmion. For our next winery, we head back east to Beaver Creek, where you will find Forest Edge Vineyard working with nature itself to make wine within a peaceful clearing deep in Oregon's Mount Hood territory.
Well, you know, we wanted to buy property in the valley, and so we looked at quite a few places, and then we found this. It was 45 acres of land that we bought in 1984. Nothing was here except the forest. But a lot of potential. So that was what appealed to us. Started building a little bit of a house to live on in 85, and then started putting the vineyard in 89, you know, as part of our management plan. So we've kind of tried to focus on also using the principles of permaculture for the way we've designed the farm. So we have grapes, orchard, forest that we manage. Permaculture is really looking at how we can learn from nature. Nature knows how to sustain itself and be viable for the long haul, and if we just observe and follow nature, we will also be sustainable. So that's kind of been a core principle for us.
So how have you gone that route and incorporated, how many acres of vines do you have now?
We have about 6 acres of vines. So some of the things we chose to do were how we did our windbreak, the trees we planted there. So it's a combination of firs and flowers for bees and berries for birds and those that are more nitrogen fixing. Everybody wants to be sustainable these days, and we're very concerned about sustainability. We want this to be a working farm and forest forever, to try and preserve the land for future generations. One of the other decisions we made later, not till like 2015, was to put in solar. So our winery is about 90% solar powered.
Well, it's definitely beautiful out here, and what a lovely approach. How many different varieties of grapes do you grow out here, and what are some of your favorite bottles that you make, wines that you make?
Sure. We essentially grow 3 varietals: Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Liamio, those 3 grapes. But with those, we have done a whole diverse range of wines. A red blend, we've done sparkling wines, we've done rosés. We've also done a white blend that might be Chardonnay and Pinot that we've treated like a white, a little sweetness. We've done dessert wines, like an ice wine, and a couple of ports. So with even just a few grapes, you can try different things.
So take me through that process a little bit. I know you've just finished this year's harvest. So how will you decide what those grapes will become?
You know, you were asking about, can I taste it when I first pick? I don't know that I can taste exactly what the wine is going to be, but I can taste whether it's ripe enough. You know, we also test and do chemical analysis, but you also taste and go like, oh, does it feel full flavored? And then as it's fermenting, we can see that kind of, are we getting good color? So if we're getting good color, then maybe we will keep it as just a straight Pinot, but maybe it's a little lighter this year, and oh, so maybe we should make a rosé, or maybe it would be better as a blend. So yeah, we only make wine from what we grow. We buy a little bit of grape to supplement our Liamio from a neighbor up the road. And we're trying to keep it small and manageable for 2 of us, because we want to stay a 2-person operation. We're not interested in being huge. We focus on really selling direct to customers from our tasting room, from farmers markets, and doing events in the community.
I get a sense of that's what you love about this process, from harvesting to the wine tasting, the business. You love the part of community.
For me, it is part of being part of the community and being connected to our other fellow winemakers, so I know what they're doing, and I can tell people about going there or other farms in the area. We're part of the farm loop, so you can say, oh, you come here, but you want to pick blueberries, so I can tell you this other place you can go. I think that's a little bit about the Mount Hood territory, whole region. There's so much to do, both you could go to the mountain, the river, the other farms, the history of Oregon City, and I think it's part of knowing that, and I think that's some of the uniqueness of winemakers here. We feel like we are part of that community and that tourism.
It's really nice. Well, thank you so much for having us out. I can tell people would have a great time coming and exploring your farm and tasting your wines.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having us.
A short trip southeast through the Willamette Valley brings you to St. Joseph's Estate Vineyards and Winery, one of Oregon's most storied and historic winemakers.
Let me learn more about your property and take me back to your parents discovered this property and they planted the first grapes. How did it all begin?
Yeah, they moved out here in 1970, and then my mom was just egging on my dad, like, what are you gonna do with all this land? And so my dad comes from a winemaking family back in Hungary, and he decided to plant grapes. So that was in 1978, 79.
I mean, it's really exploded since then.
Yeah, we've got a little bit over 40 acres in grapes, and mostly in Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Riesling, Chardonnay.
We have some Gamay, we have some Syrah.
Your property is spectacular. Your wines are just beautiful and lovely, and I know many people love them. What do you do differently here?
So we've got 5 sets of vineyards, so it's called estate when you grow your own fruit. So we're very fortunate to be able to harvest out our back door and crush within an hour. And then we make a variety of whites and reds, as well as some sparkling wine. When her parents started the winery back bonded in '83, there were less than 30 wineries in Oregon. So they're one of the originals. And then now there's between 700 and 900, but there's probably only 100 or so that actually grow their own fruit, make their own wines, and bottle it in their own facility. And so we do everything from soup to nuts, and it's still just a handful of people, and we do it the old school. We take our time. And
so many different wine varieties here. Tell me how and why you decided to do a sparkling variety, and what does it take to produce that?
Oh, my dad had a buddy down in Napa that gave him some Charmant tanks, and they're special tanks where instead of injecting the yeast into the bottle, which is méthode champenoise, we inject the yeast into this larger vessel and re-ferment the wines.
And then we also have purchased in the last 10 years special bottling lines. We're able to put the wine into the bottle. We've kept the packaging to a minimum, so while it looks like a beer cap, it's actually a special champagne cap.
And I see you have a white and a rosé version of it.
We've got 4 sparkling wines. We've got the white, which is a Riesling-based, really nice, crisp, little bit of tartness there, but finishes nice acid. We've got a Chardonnay, we've got the Pinot Noir rosé, and then we also make a red sparkling, which is Syrah-based.
Well, I do love a good sparkling wine, so it sounds like I'm not alone. They're very popular.
They are.
Yes.
Yeah. What can you say about people coming this direction and this way for wine tasting and try these wines versus, other locations that they might go to?
I think it's a lot more laid back and casual.
We like to say it's tasting on uncrowded roads because we're out in the country, not a huge lot of traffic. And then one of our sayings is serious wines for the not so serious, because we're making wine, it's not brain surgery. We want you to enjoy it and come back again and enjoy it.
So my parents grew up drinking wine on the at the table pretty much daily, and that was one of the main philosophies that we grew up with, and also that was the main philosophy for the winery when we started it, to make really affordable wines that tasted great, that you could just enjoy and drink every day.
When you have guests come out here for wine tasting and to enjoy the wine, enjoy the property, what do you hope they take away with them having experienced St. Joseph's?
We hope that they've had a great time, first of all, here, but also in our area. I feel like if you've had a nice day, it's much more memorable than just the glass of wine that you had that was nice.
So our goal is for people to come out and enjoy, and we want to have our wines priced so that you can enjoy them at home. And we hope that people will go home and enjoy the wines instead of just talking about this beautiful bottle that they spend a lifetime and they're going to put it on their shelf and not just to look at.
You want them truly enjoying your wines.
Right.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Such a beautiful property. We've loved exploring and learning about St. Joseph's and the history of your winemaking here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us for Eye on Wines of Mount Hood Territory. We hope this small flight of wineries has inspired you to take a trip through Oregon's Mount Hood Territory and taste its world-class wines. To learn more, visit mounthoodterritory.com/wineries. I'm Natalie Marmion, and until next time, cheers.